Hi, welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about in this video what happens after you've made your your first 3 decades. So we started in the center of our cord and we made the 3rd decade, and then in Our Father we made the 2nd decade, and then in Our Father, and then we made the 1st decade, but no Our Father. Okay, so we have got let me just kind of bring that in so you can see it, because the camera zoomed in a little bit here. But we have the 3 decades and 2 Our Fathers separating them. So there's nothing on either side of the Hail Marys here at this current point, okay? You also should have a pretty short cord here at the end that you had been working on. So you had been working to the right. So you did your 3rd decade, your 2nd decade, your 1st decade, and then you've got this cord that's kind of short. Okay? At this point, we're going to step away from our master. This is outside of the first knot and the rest of the rosary. This is the only time we're going to be stepping away from our master. So we're just going to push that off so we don't utilize that. So we're now going to actually take this cord that we've been working on, and we're going to flop it. So we're going to put that on the left-hand side, and we're going to bring the cord that was over on the left, which is very long. I'm going to wad it up so you can see. It's a very long cord, about 10 feet, a little less maybe. Okay. Whoops, got another rosary here intertwined. Okay, so we have a big amount of cord that was on the left-hand side. That's now going to be on our right, okay? So this was the very first knot we did. Remember when we started our rosary, right in the center of our rosary, we always worked to the right, but now we've flipped it. So we've moved that cord that we were working on that's really short now over to the left. From here, we're going to start to make an Our Father. And then we're going to do the 4th and 5th decades, okay? So remember, when you make an Our Father, we're going to allow it to dangle a little bit more off the side. We're not going to pull it up too high because there's a space there, remember? So we do the same thing though. It's a crossover underneath. I'm going to make the X, that's my first wrap. To the left of that, I make my second wrap. To the left of that, I make the third wrap. And to the left of that, I make the fourth wrap. Because we're making an Our Father, it's 4 wraps. I find the end of my cord. I'm going to go from behind and underneath, and I'm going to pull it out the front. Remember, your cord should always be coming out the front when you're pulling it through your knot, underneath your knot. Okay, I'm going to slide that off. And remember, we kind of gauge, it's about 5/8 of an inch around there. I'm going to kind of tighten it down a little bit to that point of where I think about 5/8 of an inch is. See that? But before I tighten it all the way down, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this decade, which was the 1st decade we did, and I'm going to bend it right in half, like that. And what I'm going to be doing, so that's that 1st decade we made, I'm going to be making sure that my Hail Marys line up and my Our Fathers line up. And that's what we're going to do for the remaining 2 decades and the remaining 2 Our Fathers that we're making here, okay? So I can see that my Our Father needs to go a little bit to the left for me. So I'm just gonna slide that over a little bit, and I'm gonna tighten them down more, and then I'm gonna check it again. I'm making sure my Hail Marys are lined up, and I'm making sure that these Our Fathers are lining up. Are you guys seeing that? Hopefully on the camera. So remember, I just folded this 1st decade here, well, the 1st decade we made. I'm folding it in half and lining up the Hail Marys and this new Our Father that we just made. So it should look like that. Okay? So once I have it in the right spot, remember, I push with both sides of both thumbs from either side, and I pull on this cord to just make it super tight, because we want all our knots to be tight so they don't move in our rosary ever. and it's great for the person who's going to be praying on it. It will be less likely to move, and it will keep it like a nice rosary. Okay, so there we go. So we are no longer comparing to our master. That we're setting aside for this remaining 2 decades and remaining to our fathers. Okay, so now I'm off to making the next decade. So this will be the 4th decade. So I have to leave that space again so it dangles off. I cross over, under, make my X, first wrap. Second wrap is to the left of the first. Since it's a Hail Mary, it's only 2 wraps. We come from behind and underneath. Pull it out the front. Oops. And that should line up right next to our wraps. I'm going to slide that off. Remember, I'm gauging about a 5/8, half an inch to a 5/8 of an inch space between my Our Father and my Hail Mary. But before I get it too tight, I'm going to, remember, I'm going to bend this decade in half, so I can compare my own rosary. And the reason we do this is no matter how hard we try, we will be a little bit off from our master. And so at this point, what's most important is that our 2 sides of our rosary matches up, okay? So it looks like I need to just tighten this and move it just a hair to the left. So I'm gonna do that. I'm squeezing, pushing on either side, and pulling only with the right hand's cord. I'm going to line it up again just to verify that I am in line, and I am. So see how I'm comparing now to my own rosary, what I've already made so far, so that both sides of my rosary line up. And here's what I mean by that. Here's my example master, right? See how these line up? The Our Fathers, all the Hail Marys, the Our Fathers. That's what we want for our rosary too. So that's why we're now stepping away from the master to make sure that we're lining up with our own rosary, okay? So for these last 2 decades and last 2 Our Fathers, that's what we do. Okay, so I'm going to make my next Hail Mary. I come from behind and underneath. Goodness. My cord wants to keep flipping up there. Pull it all the way through, slide it off. Remember, it's about an 1/8 of an inch between the Hail Marys. But before I get it too tight, I'm going to bend that decade, that first decade we made, which was the 3rd decade, and I'm going to line up my beads to see where they are. So it looks like I need to move this guy out quite a bit. There we go. So I make sure he's all tight. And remember, once I get him in the right spot, it's good to push from both sides. Then that way you won't move that knot. Okay, so there I'm lining up with my own rosary, okay? Next, Hail Mary. Remember, it's only 2 wraps because it's a Hail Mary. We go from behind and underneath, out the front. We tighten down, not completely, but about an 1/8 of an inch away. I'm going to bend my rosary. I'm going to make sure it's lining up. So I need to come out just a little bit. And there we go. See how I'm lining up with my own rosary? I'm not worrying about the master at this point. The master set us up for the first side, and now we are just going to continue to follow that so it lines up with our particular rosary. Okay, so we're going to do another Hail Mary. 2 wraps. Always working towards our left hand. We come from behind and underneath, and then it pulls out the front of the tool. We slide it off. We tighten it down to a little bit, leaving the 1/8 of an inch space. Then we match it up to our rosary to see if it's all lining up. A little bit out. It's looking good. Okay, we move on to the next one. Two wraps. Find the end of your cord. We go from behind and underneath. It comes out the front of our tool. We slide it off. We tighten it down a little bit. Remember, we're gauging that 1/8 of an inch space. And you'll get better at doing this as you make these. And then you're going to fold in half and compare to your own rosary to make sure that your sides will be lining up and it'll look like a very nice lined up rosary. Okay, it's looking good. So I'm on to the next knot, the next Hail Mary. Okay, so I line it up. It's looking pretty good. And then we're just going to keep on doing this. So I'm going to go to, I've got, looks like 4 more. 4 more Hail Marys on this decade. Whoops. Now, some of you might be having some issue with your cord. This is a twisted cord, so sometimes as you're pulling things through, it'll get really untwisted and you'll think, oh my goodness, I can't use this anymore. But if you just run your hand down the cord, for some reason, it will just help it to kind of get back into that twist, and what looked really awful will just fix itself. So just run your hand down the cord if that happens where it untwists. Okay, so everything's lining up really nicely. We're just going to keep making our Hail Marys till we finish the decade. Just keep comparing. So see how it's lining up with my own rosary here, okay? That's what's important, that we're lining up side by side when we hold up our rosary. We want that all to line up. And just make sure you're making really tight knots. If you don't make tight knots, what's going to happen is that it'll make it so that the knot can move a little bit. And we don't want that to happen because then it'll get all misaligned, and we don't want that. Also, if you don't keep things really tight, you will likely run out of cord at the end to finish your rosary. And that's not a good thing. So you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping everything super tight because we're making a lot of knots. And even if you're just slightly loose on each of your knots, that adds up over time, and that will rob you of the length you need to finish your rosary, okay? Okay. So we've got one more Hail Mary here on this decade. Go from behind and underneath, pulling out the front. Pull it back over and I line up side by side. Okay, so that looks good. So now I'm going to move on to the next Our Father, and I'm just going to keep lining it up with my rosary. So I leave a little space. I do 4 wraps this time. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Find the end of my cord from behind and underneath. I pass it through, comes out the front. And I remember I'm gauging about 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch, just gauging. I'm gonna get it down a little bit tight, but not too tight because in case I have to move it. Okay, so now remember, don't do this. You're not comparing here. You're comparing way down here with this Our Father, okay? So like it should be lining up way down here, okay? So make sure you don't accidentally try to compare all the way up here. You'll have your whole rosary all misaligned, okay? So we're down here. As we're tightening this knot, looks like it's good and lined up. Remember, when I want to keep my knot in place, I push from both ends and then I pull on the right cord. Okay, so now I'm good and lined up. I'm ready to do my last decade to line up with this decade over here. Okay, so I'm going to leave space again. 2 wraps this time. It's a Hail Mary, so only 2 wraps. Find the end of my cord. Under. Comes out the front. Remember, I'm going to leave about 1/2 an inch to 5/8 of an inch. I'm not going to tighten it down too far though, because I want to make sure I can still move it. There we go. Tighten that down. There we go. Okay, so I'm just always comparing to my own rosary, remember. We've put our master aside just for a little while. I'm going to make the next Hail Mary. And I may very well speed up the video here during this last decade of Hail Marys. But you're just going to keep working like we've been doing, lining up with your own rosary, side to side. Tightening it down and just making sure everything's lined up. Okay, and we are back. So you should have finished your last decade there. So we have 5 decades. You could see my rosary lines up against itself. Yours should also. So I'm just going to run that down so you can see. Okay. Now remember, for these 5 decades, we should have ended here with Hail Marys. There should be no Our Fathers. Our 4 Our Fathers are up here, as you can see. Okay. A lot of people are confused by that. They think because there's 5 decades, we should have 5 Our Fathers up here, but we do not. It's only 4. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be switching. I'm going to show you the centerpiece. So we're going to switch our tool so that the larger side is sticking out. Okay? And we're going to be keeping, as we do the centerpiece, we're going to be keeping an eye on these last 2 Hail Marys. And we're going to make sure that they're constantly, we want to keep an eye on them and keep them lined up, because then the rest of our rosary will be lined up. So we're going to take both cords, and we want to make sure that when we're doing the centerpiece, that our cords are always next to each other like that, We never want them to cross like that. Okay, so always next to each other. And we're going to be doing the same barrel knot, but we're going to be wrapping both cords together as we do it. That's the difference here. Okay, so I'm going to have this dangle off just a little bit like that. I'm going to do the diagonal just like I make a regular barrel knot. I'm going to come underneath. See how my cords are not crossing each other, they're next to each other. I make my first wrap. I make my second wrap, and look how all my cords are lined up right next to each other. And it looks like I wrapped it 4 times, but I didn't. I only wrapped it twice with 2 cords. 2 times 2 is 4. So that's why it looks like we wrapped it 4 times, but it's really just 2 because we're using both cords. Okay, so that's what it should look like right now. Underneath now, I've got these 2 cords coming out. Remember, they should be next to each other. I'm going to be taking the one on the right. In my case, it's going to be the long cord. But for you, it just depends on how you flipped your rosary. It could be the short cord, and that doesn't matter. What matters is that it's the one on the right. Okay? We're going to take that one and we're going to tuck it underneath, just like we normally do with a barrel knot. And I'm going to pull that up tight next to my wraps there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the cord that was on the left, which for me, it's my short cord. Could be your long cord, and that doesn't matter. It's just whatever cord was on the right, we do first, and then whatever cord is on the left, we do last. But both of them get tucked underneath. Whoops. Got this connected around my rosary. And everything should be lined up next to each other. So I have my wraps, and then my 2 times that I took my 2 cords underneath. Everything's laying next to each other. Nothing is crossing. Okay, it's all smooth all the way around, okay? So now I'm going to hold on to both those cords because I'm going to be pulling them at the same time, and I'm going to slide this off. And here's where I'm going to pay attention to these 2 Hail Marys. I'm going to actually put my thumb on them, and I'm going to gently pull so that those cords stay together. Really gently, slowly pulling on these 2 cords together at the same time. And I'm pushing at the base of this. Now this is when I'm going to need my rosary, my master back, okay? So my master, which I should have set that up first. My master is going to be sitting right here, and I'm going to make sure that the distance from these Hail Marys to the center is the same as the master. So I'm just going to keep moving this, and I'm pushing from both sides. I'm squeezing it, and I'm pulling on these 2 cords together at the same time. If you pull them separately, it will really mess this up, okay? Let's pull them at the same time. I see my Hail Marys are starting to get a little out of alignment. So this one needs to be pulled out a little bit. So I'm not going to hold on to the knot. I'm going to hold on to the cord right here, and I'm going to pull on that just a little bit to align that up. It looks like my knot is out too far, so I'm going to try to move him in and tighten him down. And this is one of the hardest knots because you're working with the 2 cords, and so that makes it just a little bit harder to work with. So you may at first need to keep redoing this knot, and that's okay. You just take it apart like we always do with any of the knots. We just pick with our fingernail on the end here, and we can pull that all undone so we can start anew. Okay, so see how that lines up? I'm going to make sure my Hail Marys are lined up. I see this one's a little bit out of alignment. And there we go. See how that's all? My Hail Marys are in line, and I made sure that that's the same distance as the master. Okay? I just double check everything's in line and tight. We want everything to stay together. It's really important because this is where we're actually going to cut. Well, burn to be exact. We're going to burn off our short cord here in just a second. So this knot has to be super tight, has to be a super good knot. with everything lined up next to each other, nothing crisscrossing. Looks really good and smooth and tight, okay? And then at this point, I'm gonna take the short cord. Do not do the long one. You need the long one. So we're gonna take the shorter cord, and that's the one I'm going to burn off. Do not cut it, because we need this cord to finish our cross. If you cut it, because this is twisted cord, when you cut twisted cord, it has a tendency to unravel and unravel fast. And once it unravels, you can't use that portion of the cord. So, and we need every part of this cord that we've got to finish our cross, okay? So I'm going to bend back the longer cord so it's out of the way. See how I'm doing that? I'm going to get my lighter, and I'm going to burn, and I'm going to get pretty close, but not too close, because I don't want to burn the knot, and I certainly don't want to burn the other cord. If you do, you're kind of done. And be really careful at this point. This is very hot. Once I let it cool for just a second or two, I then roll it in my hands so I have a nice end on that. And then I go back and I kind of just light this up a little bit so it'll be melty. And then I use my side of my lighter to just pound that melted plastic, because this is a nylon cord. I melt that right into and tap that right into the knot so it kind of secures it, glues it in there, okay? And before you do the centerpiece, before you burn this off, this is like the point of no return. Once you burn this cord off, you can't really undo this. But before you burn the cord off, you can redo anything. So that's the point where you want to make sure that you've checked your whole rosary and everything's in line, everything looks good, your knots are good knots, everything's tight, before you burn that cord off. Once you burn the cord off, you can't go back. We can't repair this. We can't fix this and undo it and redo it, okay? And there's your center. And then we will be working the rest of the way, and that will be another video, okay? So happy rosary making, and oh, before I forget, don't forget to hold on to this piece that you burned off. We'll need that for the cross, the horizontal part of our cross. Down here, we'll need it for this horizontal part of our cross. So make sure when you burn it off that you roll the ends, and then you just put that aside, but do not discard it, because you're going to need it to finish your rosary, okay? And then I will show you that in another video. So happy rosary making, and God bless.